It was just another normal Monday morning in the county courthouse. The smell of coffee filled the air, and lawyers walked around with thick files in their hands. The judge sat on the bench, looking at the list of cases for the day. Everything seemed routine, calm, and predictable. That was until the bailiff called out the next case. Case number 3729, State versus Michael Red. Everyone in the courtroom turned their heads when the doors slowly opened, and a young teenager walked in. He looked barely 17, maybe even younger. His suit was slightly too big for him, the sleeves reaching almost to his knuckles. He carried a large, heavy briefcase that seemed awkward in his hands, as though it weighed almost as much as he did. People started whispering to each other. Is he here for a school trip? Maybe he's a witness in the case. But then, to everyone's surprise, the boy walked right past the seats for the public and went straight to the defense table. He pulled out the chair, sat down, and placed his briefcase on the table with a calm, deliberate movement. The judge stopped shuffling his papers and leaned forward. "Young man," he said in a puzzled voice, "this seat is for the defense attorney only. Where is your lawyer?" The teenager looked straight at the judge, his face steady and confident. "Your Honor," he replied, "I am the lawyer." The courtroom filled with a low murmur, a mix of disbelief and amusement. A few people chuckled, even the judge smiled, clearly thinking it was a joke. "Son, this is a real courtroom. This is not a school project. You can't play dress-up here. Where is your legal guardian?" But the boy didn't laugh. He didn't blush. He didn't even look embarrassed. Instead, he reached into his briefcase and pulled out a neat stack of documents. Without saying another word, he handed them to the bailiff, who then walked them over to the judge. The judge glanced at the documents casually at first, but his expression began to change. The smile faded. He read more carefully, flipping through the pages. They were official certifications, proof that this young man had passed the state bar exam and was legally allowed to practice law. Everything was real, stamped and signed. The judge looked at him again, almost in disbelief. "You mean to tell me you are representing the defendant today?" "Yes, Your Honor," the boy said calmly. "My client has been wrongfully accused, and I am here to defend him." The prosecutor, sitting at the other table, smirked as if this was going to be the easiest win of his career. The case began. The prosecutor stood and gave a strong opening statement, painting the defendant as guilty beyond doubt. His voice was confident, and his gestures were sharp. When it was the boy's turn to speak, he stood up slowly. At first, people expected him to stumble over his words, but instead, he spoke with clarity and confidence that silenced the room. He broke down the accusations one by one, showing exactly why they made no sense. He spoke in plain language, so even the jury could follow every detail without confusion. Then he began presenting evidence the prosecution had overlooked: security footage, timestamps, eyewitness statements. His questions to the witnesses were sharp and direct. Several witnesses faltered, changing their answers under his questioning. Some avoided eye contact, clearly nervous. The judge who had mocked him earlier now leaned forward, listening intently. The boy moved with calm precision, flipping through papers, calling up facts from memory, and never losing his composure. Hour after hour, the case shifted. The prosecution's strong arguments began to crumble. The boy pointed out contradictions in testimony, caught mistakes in the prosecution's evidence, and even revealed that one of the witnesses had lied under oath. He showed the jury a piece of security footage that completely contradicted the witness's story. Gasps filled the room. By the time closing arguments came, the prosecutor looked pale and unsure. He shuffled through his notes, avoiding eye contact with the jury. Meanwhile, the boy stood tall and spoke with quiet power. He reminded the jury that justice was not about assumptions or appearances, but about truth. He told them that his client's freedom depended on their ability to see past stereotypes. that being young, old, rich, or poor should never decide a case, only the facts should. The jury left to deliberate, and the room waited in tense silence. Minutes felt like hours. When the jury returned, the foreman stood and announced the verdict. Not guilty. The defendant covered his face and began to cry, thanking the young lawyer over and over. The judge looked at the boy with deep respect now. "I underestimated you," he said quietly. "You have a rare gift and you used it well today." The courtroom, which usually stayed silent after a verdict, broke into applause. People stood, some shaking their heads in amazement, others smiling proudly. The boy didn't make a big scene, he simply closed his briefcase, nodded politely to the judge, and walked out, his shoes clicking against the marble floor. Word of the trial spread quickly across the city. People were amazed by the story of the teenage genius who had shocked the court and won a case most thought was impossible. And for the judge, it was a lasting reminder to never judge a person's ability by their appearance. That day, a young man proved that talent, intelligence, and determination could shine at any age, and that true skill speaks louder than any doubt.